I should just start every interview I have with you with a basic question. Does Flint have clean water?
No, no, we don't. We still have contaminated mains in the streets coming from the water treatment plant. We still have contaminated pipes and appliances and fixtures in our home. So no, and we still have lead service lines in the ground. So until all of these things are fixed and replaced, no, we don't have clean water and won't.
And that would be, we're going on 8 years of this.
Yeah, we're at 7.5 so far and counting. So
Hmm.
hooray.
Because it's funny, we're talking today. We could talk about this offline, but I had a conversation today with a media outlet, and again, it's the same thing when I'm trying to pitch them stuff because I haven't gotten off this story. It's really having to re-explain it for the first time because all of them have just stopped covering it years and years ago, and I was trying to explain because one of them said to me like, "Oh, well, at least the water is better," and I said, "Yeah, no, that's not actually the case. I was just there. People are still getting rashes. People are still losing hair. I've had residents tell me their eyes burn in the shower. I've smelled the water." So I think that's the top line before we get to the settlement, because I think there's been a lot of massaging and massaging of messaging by the state
Right.
of Michigan, even by the Democrats, the attorney general, the governor, that now this is just about healing. This is about restoring trust, but the water's fine. And it really pisses me off when outlets like Politico run headlines like Flint's water's safe. Why don't people trust it? Well, maybe you should fucking go to Flint before you say the water's safe.
Right.
So I just wanted to know from a resident who's lived and breathed and drank this, frankly, that it's not hunky dory there. The water,
No.
and how could it? You talk to any engineer, how could the water be completely fine if 8 years later they have not replaced every lead pipe? They have not the pipes from the curb into the home. They haven't even touched your damaged piping inside your home, and
Nope.
they haven't replaced the main pipes underneath the street.
And in common sense, you don't even have to be an engineer. Common sense tells you that if the pipes are corroded, damaged, rupturing, into the streets to where we have these massive Olympic pool size sinkholes, that the water that's coming through all that damaged, destroyed, corroded, contaminated infrastructure is in no way, shape, or form going to be clean in any possible way. And let's not forget that back in August, the city and state decided, let's go ahead and play with their water. Even though they didn't want another water change, we fought against it, stood against it. Former Mayor Weaver said no as for changing our water. They're blending our water with the KWA. And so we're guinea pigs again. So our water crisis that has been going on for 2,757 days now is before it's even fixed, before the infrastructure that's already delicate and damaged, falling apart, as are our bodies, before that's even fixed, they just said, let's go ahead and play with the water. Because you know why? The county needs money. Since they took on this unnecessary pipeline, they're going to go bankrupt if we don't get money. So let's go ahead and get it off the backs of Flint residents. They said 60% is what the estimate is of what our bill is going towards, is toward this other pipeline that we didn't want, didn't need, and fought against. And so they're blending our water. So before it's even fixed, before Flint Water Crisis Part 1 is even fixed, they're going to go ahead and treat us like guinea pigs and just start doing what they're going to do yet again, and blend it and not notify the residents, not do proper testing, not letting people know they need to get bottled water and they need to be safe, because of course the state's no longer providing bottled water. It's just churches and regular people that are donating.
So I want to explain that to the audience. So basically, and I've been screaming this for years, obviously, number one story, death, children destroyed forever, adults, people dying like flies,
Yeah.
early ages, cancers, kidney failure, liver disease. I've unfortunately seen it all. But this was a scam financial deal, fraud, that led to Flint even using its Flint River so that they could join a brand new water pipeline that was completely unnecessary. Flint was basically bankrupt legally at its borrowing limit. So Flint could not borrow any money to join this pipeline. But
Right.
the county needed a city of Flint size to join as part of the financing of this pipeline to finish the pipeline. And the pipeline was going to make a lot of local politicians money, a lot of real estate developers money, banks money. So now, years later, after they poisoned the city of Flint, the former mayor had the wherewithal to say, no, we're not joining this completely unnecessary water pipeline. There's no need for us to join this pipeline. In fact, it's going to further screw Flint financially if we join this pipeline with a bill of $7 million a year, was it?
Yep.
But
Minimum. And
now,
that's just for bond payments. That's not even usage.
right. So now the current mayor, he basically, who is a big supporter of this completely scam pipeline,
He's the treasurer.
He's the treasurer of the pipeline and also the mayor. He came in, and one of the first things he did was try and get Flint slowly but surely to move away from receiving its water from the city of Detroit, which before it went on the Flint River, it was getting its water without problem from Detroit. Then it cuts its contract with Detroit, goes on the Flint River, which is basically like General Motors and every other corporate polluter's waste being dumped in there for 100 years. And then after Snyder finally had to admit that the water was poisoned, they moved back to Detroit. This guy's trying to essentially, because the county that Flint is in, Genesee County, is basically going bankrupt itself. So they want, is it correct that they want to move Flint over to KWA fully so that they can make more money, since Flint would obviously be paying the county for its money,
You
for its
got it.
pipeline?
Absolutely. And what's funny is that per the EPA emergency order and my lawsuit through the Safe Drinking Water Act and the NRDC and ACLU of Michigan, the city of Flint and state of Michigan, they're not allowed to make any permanent water changes without permission, without proper testing, which they didn't do. And they're not allowed to do this. But you know what? Who's enforcing it? It's the state. They're going to slap their own wrists? No. So they just went ahead and moved forward with it without any safety information, no testing, no baseline testing, no anything. And the only reason any testing was done is I threw a huge fit the minute I heard about this and started going upline and getting my attorneys involved. And then they're like, okay, fine, we'll do some testing. They didn't even do proper sequential testing for the metals. They just showed up at people's houses. They didn't check to see what their service line was. They didn't do bacterial testing. And they're like, here, we'll do some testing. After the water's been running all day, it's going to look low, of course. And they tested the one time. They said they'd like to come back, but there's no plans for that. I'm like, what are you talking about? And also, we don't know who's in control of the valve to allow this blend to happen. That also means that if we have a problem with our water, we have no idea who we're supposed to go to, because that's two different water systems that have this valve that we don't even know who's in charge, who's maintaining it. Are we even sure it's accurate? And they're not letting people know that they started at a 95.5% blend, and we're supposed to go up every 2 weeks another 20% if the testing was good. And yet there's been delays on that, because that means the testing was bad. And so they're trying to say that this is important to do this valve work. Valve work for what and where? They won't tell us. Who's doing the work? Who's paying for the work? No answers. So I've had other people working with me to help me FOIA this stuff, because they don't like my name and don't like sending me the stuff that I'm requesting as a resident. And so nothing, no technical information is. And then so what they did was they said, oh no, it's been testing fine. So they did this huge dump of data on the state's website. And what they did was they put the individual tests for Flint, the individual test for the KWA, the pipeline, and the individual tests for Detroit, the Detroit system. None of them blended. All individuals saying, oh, it's all fine. Look at this. I'm like, yeah, where is it blended? Where is it? And who's controlling the orthophosphate levels? Who's controlling the corrosion control levels now? Oh, they're not. And the water is hurting my skin. It stinks again. And it's just like 2014 and 15 all over again. And
So
I'm like,
they're not actually, they're only testing the water individually. They're not actually testing the water. When you say blended, they're blending, what is it, like 90%? What's the actual
we don't know now. We don't know. It started off 95% GLEWA, 5% KWA, and then it went up to 75, 25. And there's no notices about the next 25%, because they're moving us to 100% KWA, while this important valve work, which
and they're saying that the reason they're blending the KWA water, again, for the audience, the totally unnecessary pipeline that caused the building of which caused Flint to go on the Flint River in the first place. They're saying that the only reason they're even blending the water with KWA and Detroit water is while they work on fixing Detroit's pipeline and valves and stuff like that.
Because I heard sitting here going, we don't know what you're talking about. So
Oh,
Detroit is saying,
really?
we don't know what you're talking about. What valves are this? And then they said, well, actually, what we're going to do is we're going to stay at 95% GLEWA to honor that contract, 5% KWA, because KWA is now the backup, because we need a backup, even though other cities in Michigan that are our size don't have a backup. We need a, you know, Flint needs a backup, and we don't want the water sitting in that pipe stagnant. So instead of it being a backup, it's being they're now calling it a secondary water source, because we get to pay 24/7 for this 5%, or so they say, because again, we know nothing about the valve, who's controlling it, how it's actually working to ensure a 95.5%
But
blend.
I think that's
Yeah.
important though. So the reason they're giving that they have to blend the water between this KWA pipeline and Detroit water is because they're saying that there's construction going on Detroit's water pipeline that Flint had been getting its water from. But the Detroit water pipeline, which is under the Great Lakes Water Authority, they're saying, what are you talking about? What construction?
Yep. And so the answer given to my attorneys was, well, the pipe that connects Flint to, you know, the KWA, it's 5 miles long. And so if water just sat there getting stagnant in that 5 mile section, we wouldn't want to send that to Flint residents, which they've been sending us stagnant water for since they started downsizing our city and running people out. But we don't want to send the stagnant water through. We wouldn't want that. So we're going to have the water, the backup running at a 5% rate 24/7, which is unheard of. Nobody else, the only people that have secondary water sources are much smaller towns to where their primary source doesn't have enough water to service everybody. This is absurd. It's basically forcing us to pay for the KWA that we didn't want, didn't agree to. And, you know, yeah, that's it. Because nobody else, by the way, has this happening. Nobody else on Detroit, nobody else in Michigan
But
is
but
having this same
also
situation. But that's
but
the
all
BS that they gave us.
but also this would leave Flint to have to pay the Great Lakes Water Authority, which is Detroit, and the
And
KWA. And
you like
who's
that?
paying for that?
We are.
Right.
And you know, the estimate, I guess, her overheard at a city council meeting is that 60% of our bill, even though it's supposed to be 95% Detroit and 5% KWA, 60% of our bill is going to KWA. So real nice.